As we await Prime Minister Andy Burnham on Monday, we are going to spend the next hour dedicating lots of time to have a good old political chinwag, because that's what we like to do on this show. So let me introduce my panel. Delighted to have my good friend John Craig from Sky News in the studio with me. John, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And also, what milk first or not making a cup of tea?
No, I don't agree.
What?
When I make tea in the morning
for
Mrs. Craig and me. She has what you might call breakfast tea. I have Earl Grey.
Oh, John.
And I put a tea bag in first, the hot water, and then the milk.
No, that's wrong. It's just wrong. You're wrong, John.
Well, I disagree.
Okay, that's fine. Steve, welcome. Steve Richards, Lorraine's favourite political commentator. Steve Richards, how do you feel about that accolade?
She's my favourite listener.
Steve, milk in first or not?
I'm very John Craig-esque on this, but with a twist. I only put a drop of milk in because you want to have the strength of a good strong tea.
I don't like it too strong. That's why I drink Earl Grey.
See, I think Steve Richards did a very Tony Blair third way on that, which I think is very admirable. Very admirable. And welcome to the show, our very own Adam Boulton from Times Radio. Hello, Adam Boulton.
Hello.
Adam, milk in first or not?
I'm afraid I'm with John and Steve on this one, although my favourite is probably Lapsang Souchong. You can need milk in that necessarily. You can sometimes just put lemon or nothing.
Can I say, Adam, that's such a Times Radio answer. Such a good Times Radio answer. Well, I say, this is me. I'm sure Andy Burnham and I will agree on lots of things. But
do you want to know two top politicians who drink Earl Grey?
Go on.
Theresa May and Rachel Reeves.
Oh, interesting.
I was once having a cup of tea with Theresa May at a Tory conference, and we both ordered Earl Grey. And I said, whenever I come to a conference, I always bring some Earl Grey tea bags in case there aren't any in the hotel room. And Theresa said, so do I.
You and Theresa May bonding. I can't stand Earl Grey. I feel like it's like hot perfume. I don't like it. Oh, someone else, James is just messaging, the milk goes in the cup first, then the brewed tea from a pot goes on top. The reason for this is that the hot water used to crack the porcelain, so the milk was added first to protect this. End of discussion. Well, I'm going to go with James. Right, okay, look, there's only one story in town, really. Andy Burnham. It's been a big journey for Andy Burnham. Here he is. He became leader of the party yesterday. He will become Prime Minister on Monday. Everyone has got an opinion on it, including the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He's been speaking with Trevor Phillips on Sky News, and he gave the new incoming Prime Minister some advice. Let's have a listen.
Well, look, I wish him well as a new Prime Minister. I think we've had quite a lot now. He hasn't got much time, I would say, and he needs to get on, and he needs to give investors in this country a sense of hope about it. And that means he needs to find reasons to buy Britain, get stuck in, and he needs to stop the hemorrhage of talent. And he needs to think about what he's doing on tax, and Labour needs to get a grip on spending.
And Boris Johnson also had some words for the outgoing Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.
Give the same advice that the late Majesty, the Queen, gave me, which was there's absolutely no point in bitterness ever about these things. And I did feel a bit sorry for Keir sometimes. And, sometimes I couldn't quite understand why he was so unbelievably unpopular. I mean, I could see he was doing a lot of terrible things, but I couldn't, when I talked to him, I couldn't see, personally, he didn't strike me as being a bad guy, really.
Interesting there. John, let's come to you first. What are your thoughts on this Saturday evening? We've heard something from Andy Burnham. We still obviously we're waiting for the substance.
One of the things that surprised me last night was when Andy Burnham and his team let it be known that he was planning to begin to move into Downing Street this weekend. Now, we saw the removal vans around the back of Downing Street yesterday, which we all assume was the Starmers moving out. But I'm surprised that the Burnhams are starting to move in this weekend before he's actually finally been officially become Prime Minister, and presumably he and his wife Frankie will do their walk up Downing Street. He will speak from the podium. We know that. And he's also one of the other things that they told us about last night was first cabinet meeting this week. Cabinet appointments Monday. I did read today that he's going to do the sackings in his House of Commons office at 2:00, and then all the lucky ones will get to walk up Downing Street from 4:00. And he's going to his number 10 of the North, number 10 North, during the weekend. He's going to unveil some policies as well. So after a policy-free speech, really, although he did later on in an interview when he went to Gravesend talk about tackling the social care crisis, I think we're going to get quite a few policy announcements over the next 3, 4, 5 days.
And John, do you think does it matter that Parliament isn't sitting for him making these policy announcements, or will the calculation be, look, there's been this hiatus, it's just better to hit the ground running and just get this stuff out?
I read somewhere that he might call for the recall of Parliament, but that would make him very unpopular with Labour MPs if he was going to do that in the middle of August. The Tories will complain, as they have complained. Kevin Hollinrake, the Tory chairman, was complaining yesterday, saying that he ought to be in Parliament next week, because, as you will know, the House of Lords are sitting next week, whereas the Commons are not.
We're very hard workers in the House of Lords.
I don't quite know why the Commons has risen so early. They rose on the 16th of July, mid-July rather than late July. I mean, I remember when Labour won the election in 2024, they sat till right at the end of July. They probably wish they hadn't, because, of course, that was when Rachel Reeves announced the disastrous policy of cuts in winter fuel payments.
Oh, yes, I remember that well. Adam, what are your thoughts in this kind of, the middle of this, very interesting weekend? We're in a sort of hiatus period, but obviously lots will be going on behind the scenes. What are your thoughts?
Well, my first thought is we may not like it as journalists or opposition parties, or indeed some of the Labour Party may not like it, but this process, very unusual, of having this gap between Andy Burnham winning in the by-election and becoming Prime Minister, has been handled, organised very well so far. And one wonders whether, given what John's saying, whether they'll manage to do the cabinet appointment. It's a total shuffle, really, of the Labour government so efficiently. I do agree, however, with Boris Johnson that Andy Burnham does need to use this opportunity to stamp his authority both on the country and on his party. And I think the hints we got in his speech at the TUC against factionalism, the suggestions that he's not necessarily going to pander to the kind of northern soft left by appointing Ed Miliband, that all would be an early opportunity for him to really demonstrate that he is going to lead. As he said, he is a leader and he does have a plan.
Steve, what are your thoughts? Just your opening thoughts.
Well, I think we're on the edge of quite significant change, and I think it will feel different. And I think we've got more of a sense of what he hopes to do. Whether he'll do it is a different question. Than for quite a few of these midterm incoming prime ministers. And, I've been trying to think, when I heard him yesterday in that speech he gave in Manchester, what was distinct about it. And it is this focus that a lot of what is wrong, in his view, with the way the country is run, is rooted in the 1980s and Thatcherism. Now, that shouldn't seem kind of too contentious, but if you think about it, every incoming Tory Prime Minister hails Margaret Thatcher. They either dress up like her, and that's just the male Prime Ministers, or go to her statue in Grantham. But if you remember, Gordon Brown, when he came in, immediately invited Margaret Thatcher for a cup of tea to convey some kind of approval. Tony Blair always said it was in his view of New Labour, was a kind of accommodation with Thatcherism. Keir Starmer was advised to write articles for the election praising her. So this is new for someone to say. The reason why this outsourced state has made people feel disconnected goes back to that period. Now, if he does something about it, this will be the counter. to.
But Steve, can I just say,
yeah,
Jeremy Corbyn did a lot of that as well. It's not like, and Ed Miliband did a bit of that as well when he was leader.
Yeah, but they didn't become prime minister.
But maybe that tells you something.
But he's about to become prime minister, so he has the chance to, if you like, make sense of it. They never got the chance. You're right. They were. I mean, obviously, Jeremy Corbyn was not going to hail Margaret Thatcher before a general election, and nor was Ed Miliband. But that's what's different. You've got someone now moving into number 10 who's going to challenge some of those assumptions and orthodoxies. Private companies running public services, loads of these weird, unaccountable agencies delivering services. A lot of that will be challenged, as well as the more familiar devolution. Now, all of this, of course, raises 10,000 questions. We could discuss them for the rest of the night. But I think the attempt to counter that will be distinct and new.
Okay. Well, look, we've got lots to get through for the next 45 minutes or so with Steve, John and Adam. Do keep your comments coming through. Back to our mega Saturday evening political chat. We've got Steve Richards, we've got John Craig, we've got Adam Boulton. John, we'll come to policy stuff in a moment, but let's just focus a bit on the potential personnel changes. Given that Andy Burnham is coming in, and as Steve said, the signals are that he wants to do something very radical. He doesn't want continuity. He does want to shake things up. Do you think that points to quite a major restructuring of the government, or do you think he might keep people in place?
He'll keep some in place, but I think, yes, you're right. There's going to be big changes. As I was saying, we hear that he's going to, or we're told, it's suggested that he'd do his sackings out of sight of the TV cameras in the House of Commons, and then the appointments later on at 4:00 in Downing Street.
And who do we think is for the job?
Well, I think the real Starmer loyalists, I would have thought.
Darren Jones.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably accepted his fate from comments that he's made the last few days.
Steve Reid.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of them perhaps are thinking, perhaps, oh, well, I've had my time. I mean, the real loyalists, I suppose, I would have thought Peter Kyle will certainly not stay as business secretary. Question is, will Jonathan Reynolds get that job back that he did before? I wonder what will happen to Rachel Reeves. I suspect he will offer her something, but the question is, will she accept it? I mean, I'm looking ahead to Monday. Let's see how smoothly it goes. We were talking about this on Sky News last night about how if it all takes, if a certain minister is in number 10 for a long time, or if it all gets horribly delayed, that suggests people are not happy with what they've been offered. And if assuming what he says is correct, he hasn't yet finalised his appointments. None of them have got any idea really of what job they're going to get. And I think we know about comebacks for people like Lucy Powell, almost certainly.
Louise Haig.
I was going to mention Angela Rayner, and probably some sort of promotion for Wes Streeting. Don't know which job he'll get that yet, though. But I think there will be some of the real storm troopers, as sometimes they're called. I think they're for the chop. I mean, if I was Liz Kendall, I would think perhaps I might be on the way out. Bridget Phillipson, perhaps. David Lammy, doesn't look too rosy for him either.
Although rumours are he might want to run for London Mayor if Sadiq Khan is happy being a full-time member of the House of Lords.
Well, do you know, when he got that peerage, I thought that suggests that Sadiq Khan's not now going to run for another term.
Okay.
What about Dawn Butler? She's a candidate for London Mayor.
I think she's sort of said that she is interested in going for that. Adam, in terms of the reshuffle, let's talk about Chancellor. I mean, it does feel like it's very much between Ed Miliband and Shabana Mahmood, although people were saying it felt like it was nudging more towards Shabana Mahmood. Although I did speak to somebody on Friday morning who's quite close to Andy Burnham's team, and they said, look, it is still being decided. What's your sense of which side he'll come down on?
Well, I don't know which side he'll come down on. What I can say is that there are many people outside of, if you like, Andy Burnham's circle, who are extremely worried about the possibility of Ed Miliband, who they do see as someone who is ideologically very much on the left. He's more interested in controlling the economy than in wealth creation. And I think were he to appoint him, you could certainly see that almost all the media would pile in and condemn this. And also there is the second point, which we understand has been made by both Tony Blair and Gordon Brown separately to Andy Burnham, that does he really want someone like Gordon Brown was in the Blair years, who sees himself as an alternative expert centre of power to a number 10. And there's no doubt about it that Ed Miliband, I think, would operate in that way. That's his instinct. So, there are two very good reasons not to appoint Ed Miliband. And the third, of course, is his particular approach to net zero, given that it seems that Andy Burnham is inclined, at least in the North Sea, to change his position. I mean, he got support of all the trade unions involved yesterday. So it would not seem to me to be a logical decision to appoint Ed Miliband. Frankly, at this stage, it would be a sign of weakness.
And in terms of if Ed Miliband doesn't get that position, which obviously he wants, and there's been lots of sort of lobbying going on, what does he do with Ed Miliband? Does he just keep him in energy, making the argument energy, and it's a good argument, energy is incredibly important in terms of getting bills down and to get the economy going? Or could you see a world in which Ed does become Foreign Secretary, although one sort of feels that, Ed is quite a political person, and would that be the right role for him?
Well, I have to say, if I was Andy Burnham, I'd leave him out altogether. If we're talking about somebody who's had their turn. Now, we understand that the Trump administration have already said that they would not like to see Ed Miliband appointed as Chancellor, but they would be even worse, in their point of view, to make him Foreign Secretary. I mean, we have to remember that Ed Miliband has been a key figure in two controversial decisions. One, the defeat of David Cameron over the proposed punishment bombing on Assad of Syria for using chemical weapons, and that defeat of David Cameron. And then secondly, more recently, over the use of bases on Iran, according to the controversial leaks reported by Tim Shipman, the man leading the no, we shouldn't let America use our bases, was Ed Miliband. So, people can agree with those decisions, but it would be, in that case, a remarkable shift that would, I think, be picked up by allies in a, frankly, a less assertive foreign policy from the UK.
Interesting. Steve, what do you think about that? This is where Lorraine wants you to come in and bat for Ed Miliband, Steve.
Yeah, well, first of all, on whether Andy Burnham would appear weak or strong, just hearing Adam's summary that rightly the media will go bonkers. There are risks with the market in the short term. It would be very brave of Andy Burnham to do it. He could sit back and do the easy thing, which is to get, in the short term at least, all the papers, what a grown up he is shown by not putting Miliband there, putting Shabana Mahmood there. But here's why I think it would be a big, it's all these things are really tough calls, and this is a tough one. But this is why I think it would be a mistake. And by the way, every midterm incoming prime minister has messed up over their chosen chancellor. It all goes badly wrong. Norman Lamont fell out with John Major when he came in midterm. Alistair Darling and Gordon Brown, as you know, were rarely speaking after a few months. He wanted Ed Balls to do it. I could go on and on. They tend to get it wrong. And Shabana Mahmood has many qualities, but she has given no thought of any substance to economic policy ever. And she's about to go in. Then I hear people say, oh, well, that's all right, because she's going to be a mere siphon for number 10. Well, I can't think of any minister less siphon-like than Shabana Mahmood.
That's a good point.
So that's why I don't think it should be her. And why I think it should be him, Ed Miliband, is that he has given endless thought to economic policy. He knows the Treasury inside out. He worked there for years. He is more expedient when he has to be. He's conceded quite a lot of ground in various issues to do with climate change. And if Burnham is saying this is going to be the biggest change for 40 years, and you put in a chancellor who's never given thought to economic policy, that to me is a discordant mistake that will go wrong.
Okay, well, you've made a very spirited case for Ed. I mean, in terms of Ed's economic thinking, which of course you're right, he has done a lot of deep economic thinking. I suppose the counter argument, of course, this is slightly difficult for me because I know Ed very well. I worked with Ed, but I'm trying to be fair and ask the questions my listeners are asking. They're saying, Steve, he has done deep thinking on the economy. He put that to the public and it was rejected in 2015.
Yeah, and that's why he didn't stand to be leader this time when he tops the polls of party members. Maybe he could have done. He was rejected. It's not going to be his programme, full stop, that comes into the Treasury. I mean, Andy Burnham has got a strong sense of what he wants to do with the economy, and people like Andy Haldane and others will be influential advisors, and Ed Miliband would have to adapt to that. But on that thing of the relationship, you see, Shabana Mahmood still wants to be leader and prime minister. Absolutely fair enough. But that, to me, is closer to tensions between other prime ministers and chancellors. The Miliband, who never does. This will be the high. So I just think he would have to adapt to what Andy Burnham wants, not what he put to the electorate.
So let's say let's say Andy Burnham does do the brave, slightly Westminster, the brave decision and puts Ed Miliband in. Ed Miliband has been pretty against drilling in the North Sea, and he's done lots of spirited arguments why. It's obviously been reported today that is a position that Andy Burnham wants to change, probably under a lot of pressure from people like Gary Smith at the trade union, the GMB, Sharon Graham of Unite. Does it pass the authenticity smell test? You've given that this is a new culture, it's new politics, it's about doing what you believe in. Ed has been completely against oil and gas drilling. Does he just suck that up if he becomes chancellor and goes, do you know what, I'm just doing a massive 360 and everything I said that I believed in, I'm prepared to just go with this now because I want to be chancellor? Does that not destroy trust in politics, Steve?
Well, we're leaping several hurdles here because I keep on reading he's not even going to be chancellor. But let's assume that he is for a second and they have a discussion about this. We know he's moved several times. So, for example, Labour's position, if he had had complete control, would have been no drilling at all after the 2024 election. He was forced to change that to all existing contracts would be realised and drilling would continue for years. I've no idea whether it's true. He was minded to go ahead with one or two of these judicial decisions he's got to make on further drilling in certain areas. So I think...
So you're saying he'd be prepared to just...
He would move.
Okay.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah, okay. It's also worth saying as well, there was already a big concession made. I mean, originally there was this 28 billion green transition that was going to be, and then that all had to sort of yes, people can change their positions in terms of if they want. Right, okay, well look, so many messages coming in, still so much to discuss with Steve, John and Adam, but we're going to have a short break to cat. We're having a really interesting political chinwag. We've got Steve Richards, we've got John Craig, we've got Adam Boulton, and of course we have you listening at home. Lots of really interesting comments coming through. We're at the point of the conversation where we are discussing some of the potential personnel changes. We will come on to some policy in a moment. Lisa says, I wonder what mischief the Chopped will cook up on the back benches. That is a good point. Pete says Burnham should make Al Cairns the energy minister and sack Miliband. That will keep Al happy. A good Aberdonian laddie, even though backing the wrong party for his very real values and competence. I actually, Pete, have had a lot of Tories lament the fact that Al Cairns is not a Conservative MP because they were like, they love him and would love to be leader. And someone else has messaged, if you think Ed Miliband should be Chancellor, you are out of touch and out of touch with how people feel outside the bubble. It may not be fair, but he's just wrong. He sounds wrong, looks wrong, is far too Islington. And this is all just connected. This is all just disconnected from the fabled ordinary person. It would be a big misstep and backfire on Andy Burnham. And Nick says, Ed Miliband is not entitled to a role. If there isn't the right spot for you, then you have to go. Andy is now running the country. But Marcus has a different view. He says, why on earth should the UK pay any attention to the Trump administration, which has shafted this country with tariffs and disloyal behaviour over and over again? Please, let's keep the US out of our politics, please. So there we go. Now, John has got an interesting thought, because we are having this big chat about Shabana Mahmood versus Ed Miliband. Let's bring John Craig into the conversation with a slightly different view.
Two theories. Theory number one, it might be neither of those two. It could be, for example, Pat McFadden, could be John Healey, could be Yvette Cooper. If you point at Yvette Cooper, you get the wise words of Ed Balls as well, I suppose, in her ear.
Come on, she is a woman in her own right. Stop that now.
Well, Ed's got plenty to say, hasn't he, in that podcast?
Does it on Good Morning Britain as well.
I know. But, no, seriously, I mean, it could be neither of them. I mean, Pat McFadden a few months ago was being talked about as a potential Chancellor of the Exchequer. Safe pair of hands.
He did message Peter Mandel saying, every meeting I go to, we talk about who can we tax to spend on other things.
Fair point.
But maybe that helps calm the markets. I don't know.
Just on John Healey, he has been a Treasury Minister before, and of course many would say he's got sound views on the need to spend more on defence. And theory number two, here's a wild one. If they wanted to bring back David Miliband, well, it's obvious. Keir Starmer won't hang around. He MP for Holborn and St Pancras. There's a by-election where he could come in.
You don't think he'd go to the Lords?
Who?
And do it, David Miliband, and do it from the Lords? Foreign Secretary like
David Cameron.
Is it?
I mean, I know David Cameron did, but
he did quite a good job of it.
He loved the House of Lords, still does, but I don't think having a Foreign Secretary or any senior minister in the House of Lords is ideal.
No, it is, and particularly for the vibe that Andy Burnham wants to do.
I'm very sceptical about Keir Starmer's claim that he's going to stay in the Commons.
Interesting.
Because David Cameron said he was going to and then changed his mind pretty swiftly.
That's where Ed Miliband lives, so that would be David Cameron being his David Miliband. Okay, look,
North London metropolitan elite.
Actually, one thing which is, I think, important to state, and I do think this is true, I think we are going to see a bit of a cultural shift in who are the sort of top dogs of the Labour Party, away from a perception and a bit of a reality that we can all acknowledge is true, that there has been a London mafia in terms, one of the things that's interesting about Andy Burnham, he will be the first Prime Minister we've had who actually sounds different in terms of he's a northern Prime Minister. Obviously Rishi Sunak was very interesting.
Yeah, we've had Prime Ministers with northern constituencies before.
But not northern accents, have we?
Not really.
No, but that's a long time ago. Come on, that's like, I'm just saying. So I think there will be, in terms of the new top dogs, I think there will be a new kind of northern set. I think not a North London set, a kind of northern set in terms of who are the power brokers. I think he will, kind of culturally want to move away from that London sort of cultural and social dominance that, to be fair, and we all know it, we all go to a lot of the same parties and we all mix a lot kind of socially out of here. There is a bit of a thing that is a bit of a truth. So that's my kind of thoughts on that. But let's move on to some policy thoughts next. Adam, in terms of the speech he made yesterday, particularly talking about the failed policies of Thatcher, talking about sort of social care, what did you read into that in terms of his policy agenda?
Well, I think what he's managed to do already, which Keir Starmer never managed to do, is to create a narrative. And appreciating what Steve was saying earlier on about, going back or seeing the last 40 years of neoliberalism as being a mistake, I think I take a slightly calmer view. I think that there is a pendulum in politics, that there was a need for greater involvement of the market in industry and all that, but we've now reached the extent where it's clearly not working with some of the public utilities, water being an obvious example. So to refine that policy and to go back seems to me to be important and quite constructive. And similarly, the policy about reindustrialization, it can be taken too far, because even at the time that those industries were shut down rather cruelly, they were, in global terms, uncompetitive. And anyway, they were a relatively small part of the British economy, which then came back with, the growth of the city, Big Bang, and services. And clearly, I think what we see Andy Burnham wanting to do with his idea of Manchesterism is concentrate on more cooperation between the private sector and the public sector in the running of utilities, and probably where politics are. That's perfectly sensible. Similarly, I think his narrative on devolution, although that will take a long time to come through, is perfectly sensible. And obviously, there needs to be a sense of rebalancing against the sort of people you were just criticising in the London bubble, towards those areas where, frankly, Labour has been losing to reform, the so-called Red Wall. And just finally, just heard about Shabana Mahmood. I think one of the reasons, well, there are two reasons why Shabana Mahmood has been talked about as Chancellor. One is because she's a woman, and there's a feeling that Rachel Reeves were to be moved aside, that there needs to be a woman at the top of government. Of course, Rachel Reeves, another name, maybe she'll stay there, you could throw that in that. But the other is, and I would recommend anybody to read it today, is Fraser Nelson's column in The Times, where he talks about the links, if you like, between immigration and welfare and the large number of NEETs in the economy, and how basically we have to get more people in this country working rather than relying on immigrants. That's very much of a piece with the economic policy of Shabana Mahmood, if you like, and her immigration policy. So I think, she may not be someone who talks about tax levels and level of borrowing, but someone who has an economic vision of how Britain wants to change. She has already demonstrated that, and that is, again, consistent with what Andy Burnham has been saying, that he wants to maintain a tough line on immigration, and he wants, following things like the Miliband report, he wants to get more people in this country into work.
Yeah, and there's also a big... following off that, there's a big kind of skills agenda as part of that, in terms of skilling up people. And you could argue as well, if he does want to do significant social care advancements, that will eventually be a Treasury question as well. OK, well, Steve, what did you... I mean, you touched on the Thatcher stuff in your opening remarks, and you said that there was, a kind of a strong argument for it. One of the things that we had a bit of a chat about yesterday on the show, we spoke to somebody from the New Economics Foundation, which of course is a very interesting left-wing economic think tank. Miata Fanbula used to be their boss. She's very close to Andy Burnham. She's doing a lot of his policy thinking. She's expected to come in as the new chief secretary to the Treasury. This economist we spoke to yesterday made this argument saying, look, actually, I know everyone talks about growth, but is actually growth what we want? Because sometimes who gets the proceeds of growth? Is it just the rich people? Is it fairly shared? Actually, what Andy Burnham's probably going to have to do is just bite the bullet and tax people more to do the good things he wants to do. Is that the honest direction of travel, Steve?
Well, I think anyone who says we don't want economic growth is in the wrong place. I mean, economic growth is the key to driving some of the things we've been talking about, including sort of improving public services, having money for levelling up. When Andy Haldane was working for Michael Gove as Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Michael Gove said to him right at the beginning, right, Andy, what do we need to make this levelling up work? And Andy Haldane said it was partly a joke, but not wholly, about £100 billion. So, economic growth will be very, very helpful. And that's, to go back to Adam's point, and I agree, I read Fraser Nelson's column, as ever, it was a very stimulating column. And of course, that's part of economic policy. But what are the drivers of growth? And I think that remains a key question. But they're also right. I mean, he said it himself, Andy Burnham, or hinted at it, that taxes might have to go up in the short term because the economy isn't growing fast enough. And it is interesting, I think, that he said, I'm willing to spend some political capital on sorting out social care because it's expensive. And when Boris Johnson promised this, he was going to do a social care levy. It was passed in Parliament. It never happened. And so I think there will have to be some tax rises, but that cannot be at the expense of economic growth. They are going to have an economic policy that grows this economy. And they need a lot of people in there who have thought about this for years. And that, I think, does include a chancellor. And to go back to that point, but and a lot of it, I think, will be driven by number 10. And that's a good thing. One of the problems with Keir Starmer early on was he showed no interest in economic policy, and that Treasury needs scrutiny.
The only thing is, though, Steve, is that, of course, if you've got a Prime Minister who is got a clear vision on the economy, that it opens you up to the potential of clashes with the Chancellor. And we've seen in history when the Prime Minister and the Chancellor clash on economic policy, it all ends badly. I mean, you think back to Thatcher, Alan Walters and Nigel Lawson going back quite a few years, and I suppose clashes between Blair and Brown. I mean, one of the successful things about the coalition government, I suppose, was that Cameron and Osborne were so tied on policy and approach and everything. And I think one of the points, I mean, we've sort of alluded to this already in the discussion, one of the things that I think for any government to work is that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor need to be on the same page and not squabbling with each other, because if they are, it ends badly. I think you've said that already, Steve.
And look,
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
Look, given that probably the next 2 weeks will be the height of his potency and power, and most people agree politically it's better to do sort of some of the difficult things early on. What do the panel think are the most difficult things that he should address first? John, I'll start with you briefly. Well,
he gave an interview yesterday when he was in Gravesend after making his speech, a fairly marginal seat, which is always one of those seats that's always gone whichever way the government's gone in a general election. So he's talked about social care, but I think that's probably a long-term thing. I mean, I think the things we've touched on already, this dreadful problem of all these young people who are not economically active. Adam mentioned Adam Miliband's proposals, and of course, migration and stopping the boats. I mean, I know it's something the opposition parties bang on about, but it is a worry for Labour voters as well. So there's a massive in-tray, really. And he's gearing up for a fight, it looks like, with Thames Water's, some of their investors. My colleague Mark Kleinman's done a story today about investors who want to take over Thames Water, threatening legal action if he wants to nationalise it.
Although I bet that's a good fight for him. It's not a bad fight for him to have.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Fat cats paying themselves big bonuses. They're shockers, aren't they, Thames Water? They're a disgrace. I'm sorry, I'm going to sound very left-wing for a moment. I think...
Go for it, John.
Michael Howard, he was the Tory minister who privatised water. It has been a disaster, absolute disaster. Consumers are being ripped off and rivers are being polluted. It's a disgrace.
Okay. Adam, what do you think is the difficult decision he should tackle first?
Well, the biggest headache he has is the state of the nation's finances. As we know, that the tax rises and cuts in government spending have already been placed on the statute books by the Chancellor, the outgoing Chancellor and the outgoing Prime Minister, we think. And then on top of that, we've got the hospital pass of defence spending with £5 billion of that unfinanced. So actually getting the detail of that, and there's a suggestion that spending review might actually be brought forward from next year to possibly the same time as the budget at the end of this year, or maybe the budget will be postponed until the spring. That is clearly a priority, and it's a political priority as well, because Andy Burnham presumably will now be leading the Labour Party into the next general election, going in at a time when public services are being cut and taxes are going up. is not a particularly rosy scenario. My guess is he will move quite quickly on social care, not least because that is something dating back from when he was last in the cabinet. He wanted to act on. Louise Casey said that she can bring her thoughts forward. That may well be tied in with possibly a look again at the triple lock, although he said he hasn't had to do that. And I think the other thing he'll definitely do, not least because he's effectively got an IOU to the GMB and Unite, is to move on North Sea.
Drilling, yep. Steve, your thoughts on the difficult things?
I think the difficult things, and by the way, I think early on he'll do things that they're obsessed with this 100 days, hitting the ground running. Well, in those 100 days, you're not going to do a sort of Rachel Reeves winter fuel payment thing. There will be things which they calculate will land well. So the first really tough decisions will be, it's been at the background of all that we've discussed. If you just think of the conversation we've had, he might do social care. I agree with Adam. I think he'll go quickly with, or as quickly as possible with social care. We've mentioned the defence spending, and we've mentioned other things which have cost implications, including sorting out the water. And we've also agreed that the economy is not growing as fast as it should be. So he's going to have to put up taxes. And that will be in the budget. And that will be, I think, the first really big, tough test for him. Can he put the case, given that taxes have gone up in previous budgets, and given the constraints of the 2024 manifesto, which he is having to work through? I think that's going to be the really first big, tough test in terms of policy.
And the question is, where do those tax rises land? Who do they hit? I mean, there's been talk about a wealth tax, there's been talk about a land value tax to reform council tax and so on, clobbering people with big, expensive homes in the southeast, all that sort of stuff. It's going to hurt. Whoever gets taxed, it's going to hurt.
I think that's a really important observation. Look, there's a sort of victimless taxes in terms of, you could say, right, let's go after, John McTurnan said earlier, let's go after the banks, they could pay some more. Or there's been talk of an Amazon sort of warehouse tax, and that's all fine, but that's not going to raise the substantial amounts of money you really need, given that you can't do income tax or VAT. So it is actually going to fall on individuals, and that, I think Steve is right, that is going to be a very difficult and telling moment for him. Loads of messages coming through. Nigel says, given that we could be seeing it whisper, the very early days of a Lib Lab pact, addressing social care will be essential. Nick says, can someone please explain why social care isn't moved into the Department of Health and Social Care instead of bankrupting local government? I genuinely don't get it. Peter says, would someone explain just how any government will make young British NEETs want to do those low-paid, unpopular jobs such as working in care, and don't pretend that the pay can be increased quickly to decent levels. Nick says, Burnham would be a fool not to appoint Keir Starmer as Foreign Secretary, in my view. Although I do hear Yvette is doing well, there's so much going on, he would be a heavyweight. And Marcus says, if the government really wanted economic growth, the best way would be to aim to rejoin the European Union. Brexit has been a big drain on the national economy. And Brendan says, Shabana not being very popular with the Labour Party is proof that she's popular with the public. And Andrea says, for goodness sake, do you really think just having a northern clique will make things anything better? I didn't say it would necessarily make things anything better, Andrea. I said, I think it's coming. She goes on to say, we need people who know what they're doing. Lucy Powell, Angela Rayner, Louise Haigh, I don't think so. Pat McFadden, John Healey and Shabana Mahmood are all very capable people. We don't need populists. That's from Andrea. Someone else has said Gordon Brown had a pretty northern accent. He did. Gareth Grant says North London metropolitan elite. He's very angry. He says that's the issue. There's nothing elite about any of them. That's Grant, not from London. Kate has said, what about Miata Fambula for Chancellor? Highly qualified, young, intelligent. And someone else says Douglas Alexander for Chancellor, safe pair of hands, serious political mind and a member of the old gang.
I think he will get a move from Scotland office, and I think perhaps Ian Murray might get his old job back. Miata Fahnbulleh, she's MP for, I think I'm right in saying, Harriet Harman's old seat in Peckham in South East London. Yeah. I think she will get it. I've heard her name mentioned perhaps for Chief Secretary.
Yes, Chief Secretary, I think.
At the Treasury. And aren't I right in saying, the other two will tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, wasn't Shabana Mahmood at one point Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury?
Very briefly.
Yes, briefly.
But of course, we don't know if we're going to have a Chief Secretary, do we? Because
no, I mean to the Treasury, not to number 10.
Yeah, exactly. That job was moved to number 10. Maybe it wouldn't be moved back to the Treasury. Who knows?
Well, the Treasury number 2, there will be a Treasury number 2, won't there? Whatever you call it.
Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Yeah. But there was that new thing, wasn't it, which Darren Jones got, which was like Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. It was like a sort of a kind of... that's when the whole Chief of Staff thing was kind of up in the air. Well, look,
that was the Cabinet post. What I'm saying is that a Cabinet post of Chief Secretary to the Treasury at the moment does not exist.
Oh, who is it then?
It's
Lucy Rigby.
It was James. Yes, it's Lucy Rigby now. It was James Murray who got promoted to Health Secretary.
My point is she's not in the Cabinet. So.
But doesn't she get to attend Cabinet? Anyway, all will be revealed very, very soon. I'm sure if Miata Fahnbulleh does become Chief Secretary to the Treasury, I have a feeling that she probably will attend Cabinet. But that's, I mean, I have no idea. Listen, the thing is, this has actually been very interesting because, nobody knows. That is the reality. They're keeping their cards very close to their chest. And Monday afternoon is going to be pretty box office, and of course
popcorn at the ready.
Absolutely. We'll be bringing you all the coverage here in Times Radio. Well, look, gentlemen, we've come to the end of our time. What a fantastic discussion. Thanks for being so generous with your time. My huge thanks to Steve Richards, to Adam Boulton and to John Craig, who's come into the studio.